Hello, everyone, and welcome to Super Stonk Brothers number 10. Today, we're going to be talking about two topics. The first has to do with a number of tweets that Elon Musk tweeted about, setting the whole Bitcoin and crypto universe into a frenzy. And so we'll go over those tweets and we'll talk about the potential of Elon to not only back Dogecoin and go away from Bitcoin, but to also potentially launch his own cryptocurrency. What we actually, I think we were the first to speculate about Tesla starting a Teslacoin, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. But what are the odds of Elon actually launching Teslacoin? Why would he or would he not do that? What does that do to the potential value of Bitcoin or alternative cryptocurrency? We'll be talking about that. And secondly, there was an article from Bloomberg titled "How to Afford Yale If Inflation Creeps Above 3%." And so we're going to talk about that article as well as inflation more generally. On the podcast, you have your regular host, myself, Macro 108, aka Joe Kim, and Steve Palley. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, man. Yeah, congratulations on making it to double digits on this show, man. It feels pretty good.
We actually got to 10.
We got to 10, yeah, and going strong. So we're having fun and learning a lot. And yeah, the two topics, they're related, right? Because a lot of the crypto mania has been driven by people getting worried about inflation.
Fear of inflation. Absolutely.
Exactly. And you could think about it as new school, all the crypto stuff, and then old school, which talks about Yale's endowment and how it has done well against inflation over the past 30 years. So two sides of the same crypto, I guess you could say.
Yeah, so maybe kicking it off, we'll go ahead and I will share my screen.
I will just preface this by saying this whole episode is insane. And it has all taken place over the last, 48 hours or something?
Yeah.
Maybe 72 hours.
It's amazing how one man has so much power, right? Like
he is the world's biggest influencer. That's what Elon Musk is. I don't think there's any question about it. So
for those of you who aren't aware, this was all precipitated when Elon tweeted about Tesla and Bitcoin. You can read here. Tesla has suspended vehicle purchases using Bitcoin. We are concerned about rapidly increasing use of fossil fuels for Bitcoin mining and transactions, especially coal, which has the worst emissions of any fuel. So basically what Elon is saying is that they're going to stop accepting Bitcoin. He does not like the carbon footprint of Bitcoin. The surprising thing is that, this has been kind of well known for a while, just the carbon emissions and basically the energy consumption of Bitcoin. But then he, based upon this tweet that he is backing away from Bitcoin, this caused all the Bitcoin bros to go crazy, turn on Elon. Like the hatred and vitriol that they tweeted against Elon was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'll just say the Bitcoin community, unfortunately, has a contingent of really angry people. It's kind of an incel flare type thing.
Right. And I think the thing that the Bitcoiners need to remember is that if you're an investor, like the single most important characteristic is your ability to keep your cool, right?
100%.
And so if you are operating on tilt, and if you aren't able to keep your emotions in check, you are by definition a bad investor. So,
sounds like you speak from experience, Joe.
Oh yeah.
Me too.
I'm not trying to point out faults in anyone else and say that hasn't been me in the past, or that it couldn't be me at some point, but you really have to keep your emotions under control. And to be a great investor, I hope the audience is aware, you really have to keep calm and make very emotionally neutral decisions, right? And so if you see Bitcoin going one way or the other, there's a lot of people who've gone all in on Bitcoin, who have really bought in, came in super late. And now that kind of Elon's turning from Bitcoin, now that things can go in another direction, they've just gone crazy. Now, the other thing too is that there is this guy, Mr. Well, who tweeted, Bitcoiners are going to slap themselves next quarter when they find out Tesla dumps the rest of their Bitcoin holdings. With the amount of hate Elon Musk is getting, I wouldn't blame him. And so Elon Musk then replied, indeed. Now, does that mean indeed the second part or indeed the first part? Right? And so based upon this, there's a lot of speculation that Tesla may dump Bitcoin.
And they would have to disclose that, right? In their core release. That's what he's talking about, right?
that, in their financial statements,
Yeah.
that whether they
If they dump
sold
it.
off their, they would have to disclose.
Yeah. Elon himself does not have to disclose what he buys or sells, however.
Right. Now, the other kind of arguments that have been popping up via Twitterverse has been this guy who talks about, the perfect troll is one where people don't know whether it is a troll or not. Your recent poorly informed criticism of Bitcoin plus support for Doge may be the perfect troll, or you might actually believe this. And then Elon Musk replies, Bitcoin is actually highly centralized with supermajority controlled by a handful of big mining companies. One of the other things that Elon does not like, whether it's about Bitcoin or Doge, although it's unclear about Doge yet, is just the holder concentration, right? If you have a few people that own a huge amount of the currency, then that's actually bad. It's bad for a number of reasons. It's bad because of, one of the reasons that I don't like it is just the wealth inequality gap will just get bigger, in my opinion. But then based on this tweet, you see here some of the Dogecoin distribution, and it seems like the point I'm trying to make is that this is an issue that Elon cares about, the holder concentration. And so Elon believes that that a lot of the exchanges are responsible for being big holders of Doge. And if that's the case, that's kind of okay, right? Exchanges rather than like individuals. But this is something that I don't know if it actually can be completely verified, whether they are all just exchanges or whether there are some individuals that hold a huge amount of Doge.
It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of those big accounts are exchanges, but the question then becomes, how many exchanges are there? We're looking at big numbers. We're looking at millions, hundreds of thousands and millions of accounts in those concentration buckets. And I just don't think they're going to be able to skew the distribution like that, just mathematically. But yeah, I listen to Peter McCormick's podcast occasionally. He has some real freaks on there, but also some intelligent people. And I think, Elon's argument about concentration is somewhat disingenuous because he's not talking about nodes. He's talking about miners. And those are two different things when it comes to sort of the distribution of voting power within the Bitcoin network. That actually depends on nodes, not so much on mining. But, a lot of people don't know that.
The other issue here in terms of, why Elon is throwing support behind Doge relative to Bitcoin. So here, Elon is choosing Doge because Dogecoin is better than Bitcoin in many fundamental ways.
Who the hell is this guy? He's got the Doge thing in his heading.
Faster transaction speed, lower fees, less environmental impact. Doge is affordable for regular folks because of its high supply. Okay, and then here, what matters most is kind of like where Elon is thinking about this. And so what Elon is doing is he's kind of doing two things, I think. One, he's stating like the objective of the cryptocurrency that he's looking for. And I think he's also setting the bar for the Doge developers, right? And so the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I believe that the reason why there will be a Doge, I believe why Elon will eventually put his support behind his own coin versus Doge is because I just don't think like him setting this bar and expecting like those 4 developers that are working on Doge to achieve this. I mean, when you extrapolate that out, is it really believable? I don't think so. I mean, Elon kind of took over Tesla because they weren't achieving his high standards, his high targets. And so when we think about, in terms of where Elon will put his focus and his support from a crypto perspective, well, here he's saying, ideally, Doge speeds up block time 10x, increases block size 10x, and drops fees 100x, then it wins hands down, So that's what he's saying. He's saying, here is what's going to have to happen. And so I just don't think that these developers who are working on Doge, and we've seen like, if you see like the Git commit, like it's kind of dropped pretty significantly, that having those guys achieve what Elon believes is required for this currency to win hands down, I don't think it's going to get there. And the other thing too is that under this tweet, Elon actually, in a couple of tweets that were deleted, Elon had suggested that if Doge doesn't get there, he might start his own currency. Now, that tweet has been deleted, but I believe that, that one, I think this is, when we talked about inflation, tie this back to inflation. This is something that Ray Dalio had basically been, Ray Dalio's been talking about inflation for a long time. He's been talking about this pattern, right? That you start with hard money, then you go to claims on hard money, then you go to fiat money, and then eventually we'll go back to some hard money. I think what Elon is saying and what he's increasingly potentially believing is that crypto will be that hard money alternative in the future, and that it's happening. So if it's going to happen, then I think that what we're seeing with Elon getting increasingly involved in crypto is that he, in my opinion, this is speculative, that he believes that crypto is the way to be Earth's currency in the future, which is something that he tweeted here.
Mm-hmm.
That low fees and high volume needed to become currency of Earth. And so if Elon believes that this is a mission worth undertaking, and increasingly seems that it is, then it becomes, so what do we know? That he's moving away from Bitcoin. And so he then has two options. Does he support Doge or does he do it himself? Doge right now is just not resourced enough to hit these targets that he's talking about, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that with, if you believe some of the stories behind Tesla, that when he didn't see enough progress behind Tesla, he kind of went in and did it himself and kind of took over. I think that's what's going to happen here. I believe there will be a Tesla coin, and if that happens, then the other questions to talk about will be, one, how many cryptocurrencies? So this raises a couple of fundamental knock-on effects, right? One,
Mm-hmm.
how many cryptocurrencies are viable? And I believe that there will only be one viable cryptocurrency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say then, two, what is the potential for Elon Musk, if he were to support his own cryptocurrency, for that to displace Bitcoin or not?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And probably the one other thing I wanted to talk about is, if we were to talk about the applications of crypto today and why I believe in an alternative crypto is necessary versus some of the problems, right? So one, so we talked about this before when we talked about Bitcoin, but Bitcoin and crypto generally represents a speculative asset, like people are, and this is, in my opinion, this is why most people invest in crypto. 99%, in my opinion, of people, 99% of people invest in Doge or Bitcoin or Ethereum as a speculative asset. What they see is they see inflation, they see kind of where our economy is going, and they see the writing on the wall that crypto is the future, that some kind of currency like crypto has to be the reserve currency, or some form of reserve currency in the future. And so they view it as a speculative asset. They also view it as a store of value. But
because it's a store of value. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then is it a currency? Right? No. By the pure definition of currency, it's not widely used enough. Sure, there are some transactions that occur with Ethereum and Bitcoin, but those aren't common transactions that occur across a wide percentage of Bitcoin or other holders. And so I would say that in order, as Elon mentioned, in order for it to become a currency, some big things are going to have to happen. And so some of the problems that were discussed through the tweets, one, these are the key problems that have to be overcome. Holder concentration, speeding up block time by 10x, increasing block size by 10x, and dropping fees by 100x.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, can Doge do that? And I guess my opinion is no. And if it's a no, based upon the few developers that are working on Doge right now, and based upon some of the fundamental issues that are going to have to be resolved,
mm-hmm.
I think that Elon I think he's just going to have to do it himself.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Steve?
Whoo! It's a spicy meatball, man. All right, let's begin at the beginning here. All the way back,
okay,
when that's the tweet that started this whole thing off.
Yeah.
So he says, Tesla has suspended vehicle purchases using Bitcoin. We are concerned about rapidly increasing use of fossil fuels for Bitcoin mining and transactions, especially coal. which has the worst emissions of any fuel. And you alluded to this earlier, Joe. Do you mean to tell me that Elon was not aware of Bitcoin's energy usage profile prior to basically pumping the coin by acquiring it for Tesla? I doubt this very much. We're talking about one of the smartest people in the world.
Yeah, but
just on the face of it.
But in his defense, though, he's also the busiest person in the world, right?
I'll get to that.
So much. He's working on so much. He might have been like, oh yeah, because I think the other thing that he tweeted about that may have precipitated this is like some nuclear power plant or something like, or so, oh no, it was a coal plant that got resuscitated to do Bitcoin mining or something like that. And so I guess that was one of the things that caused him to rethink the energy issue.
Let's see what else he says here. Tesla will not be selling any Bitcoin. We intend to use it for transactions as soon as mining transitions to more sustainable energy. So that's pretty clear. And it sounds like a material statement from a, CEO of a public company. Although with Elon, you never really know. He plays pretty loose on Twitter, as we know. And the SEC, he's gotten in trouble with the SEC for just saying shit on Twitter that he shouldn't say. And this could be another case of that, to be honest with you, because if you look at the timing, he acquired the coin and pumped the coin and then sold the coin all before quarterly results. And then he tanked the coin. Right. And
but
you can look at that.
They still hold a lot of it. I mean, he's not doing it for financial reasons, obviously.
Well, we don't know what Elon holds or doesn't hold personally. Right. We know what Tesla holds or doesn't hold, but we don't know what Elon's doing.
Although I think he's publicly stated that he's like 100%, his own companies, but like he doesn't own any external stock. I believe he said that in an interview before.
Fair enough. And if that's the case, that is the case. I'm just saying, if he were to be a major holder or of one or several of these cryptocurrencies, there would be no way for us to know that. Right. So at this point, it really depends how you feel about Elon personally, whether you think he's sincere or whether you think he's a market manipulator. And I've heard, frankly, both arguments. A lot of people are like, this is really blatant manipulation of markets, and the SEC should get involved.
He's already the richest guy in the world. Is he really looking for an additional,
How do you think he became the richest guy in the world? Was it by accident?
Yeah, I just don't think, I don't think
this is a counter argument, right? I like Elon. And as you know, I'm long Tesla. I'm also long Bitcoin, right? So I'm trying to figure out what to do here. But it's an argument, right? You have to admit this is an argument circulating. This is textbook market manipulation. It's what some people are saying.
Well, I don't think that Elon looks at it like that. I think Elon is always thinking about what is best for humanity's future. And if the way he's thinking about it is, okay, humanity needs a currency, like a cryptocurrency, that is the most efficient and effective for humanity. And so I think he just kind of sat down, thought about it, and he's like, oh yeah, actually we could do better. And he's been working with the Doge guys apparently for a couple of years. And so they've been working on stuff, and they've been working on some of these problems around energy efficiency and so forth. Now, that's just been kind of I think he hasn't been doing that seriously. Like it was noted that he offered them resources if they wanted any money to increase development, but they haven't been doing that. That may have been the reason for him buying Bitcoin, which was to say, okay, these Doge guys are kind of, they're freaking weekend warriors kind of hacking the stuff. They're like indies.
Well, they are indies. They started it as a joke.
Right. So, but that may have been why he went long Bitcoin, because he's like, well, Bitcoin is more serious, right?
It's a lot more serious.
Yeah. And then I think what may have happened is, in my opinion, at least, once he saw the writing and the writing on the wall with respect to actually this crypto thing, you just look at where we are, and we're going to talk about inflation next, but where we are in terms of the economy, in terms of inflation, and this potential shift back to hard money. He is, if not the smartest one of the smartest guys in the world. So he's got to be seeing the same shift that Ray Dalio's been talking about for years. Yeah. And so if he sees that, then he might think, okay, now's the time for me to step in, because this shift is actually going to potentially happen now.
Pretty soon. It could happen really fast. I think that's unlikely, but it totally could. It could be a black swan. I'm with you there. And I'm also with you that now would be a great time to step in out of left field. and try to do this. I agree with that. Scroll up a little bit about this point about basically scalability. So we're talking about block time 10x, block size 10x, drops fee 100x. The grand irony to me of Elon's position here is that there was a war within the Bitcoin community
back in hard fork, right?
Yes, but back in 2016 and 2017 between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, right? What ultimately was called Bitcoin Cash. And the guys behind Bitcoin Cash were mostly moneyed corporate interests and very powerful miners in China. The guys that Elon purports to dislike because of concentration reasons, right? And they wanted to turn Bitcoin into more of a currency, give it more currency-like aspects by increasing the block size, speeding up the block time, and dropping fees, just like what he's talking about. They did not succeed, like, to put it mildly. Bitcoin Cash still exists, but it's, somewhere between 1% and 3%, but Bitcoin's market cap. So the store of value argument won over, and the decentralization and the security arguments provided by Bitcoin's, frankly, exorbitant use of energy resources. They are exorbitant, and that's a real problem, but they provide real benefits for the currency, and people like that. The market has spoken, like, pretty decisively in the form of Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash, in my opinion. And that's a clear test case for the ideas that he's floating here about turning Doge into like a global currency of sorts. So, there's actually a test case, and it happened 3 years ago. And once again, I find it hard to believe that Elon would be unaware of the history of Bitcoin to that extent, given that he's pumping himself as somebody who understands money and the history of money.
Right, but I don't think he cares. So they did that. Like, Elon doesn't care. He cares about what, like, from first principles, what's the best approach, and he's going to do what he thinks is the best approach, regardless of what happened in the past.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are other technical considerations here, such as the fact that if you were to increase block time decrease block time and increase block size, that would lead pretty inevitably to a concentration in hashing power. Basically, the big guys would be more likely to win, just because the block size is bigger, and it would become a lot more corporate, in my opinion. Of course, Elon himself is pretty corporate in that he owns an incredibly valuable corporation, and something like Teslacoin could be a tremendous asset. But when you ask yourself, do I want the new currency of Earth to be effectively run by one guy, even if that guy is Elon Musk? I'm going to have to turn you down there, like irregardless of what you think about Elon. It's better to have a fiat currency that's run by a government, at least that is at least like nominally representative, than to turn things over to a freaking philosopher king for all time.
But I think a lot of people will disagree with you on turning it over to a government, right? Like,
sure.
What government does anybody
I'm saying
trust?
I would rather that than have it in the hands of Elon Musk, or for that matter, the ether guy, Buterin. Vitalik Buterin, he basically controls everything that ETH is doing. Right. Not fully, but like he has the most power of anybody, and he can dictate its course, and he's doing it.
Right. But not a bad guy, like a guy that gave like $1 billion to India for COVID relief.
No, not a bad guy.
Yeah.
It seems to be a good guy, but again, one guy, and guys change their minds all the frickin' time. We just saw it with Elon, right? He changes his mind a lot. I would rather, if this is going to happen, if this is inevitable, I would rather turn the keys over to a mathematical process that is inexorable, unalterable, and well understood, so that everybody understands the rules of the game. And that is the way it works for all time.
But that's Bitcoin, right?
That is Bitcoin. Yeah, Bitcoin.
But he could create something like that.
He could, but then the question becomes, can you create something like Bitcoin without going down the exact same road that Bitcoin went down with the protocol called proof of work? And proof of work is what is so controversial about Bitcoin. It is what secures the network, and it is also what burns all of that energy.
Right. So for the audience, could you talk about proof of work versus proof of stake? And maybe you can even talk about ETH2, which is proof of stake.
Yeah, absolutely. So proof of work and proof of stake are two types of what's called a consensus mechanism in cryptocurrency. And a consensus mechanism is a pretty simple idea. Cryptocurrencies are distributed on the blockchain, right? So everybody has a copy of the blockchain, and you need a way to reconcile all of these copies across the entire internet on a regular basis. Otherwise, your blockchain is going to go in a million different directions, and it's not going to be worth anything. It'll just splinter, right? So you need to bring everything back together. There are two major ways to do this. One is proof of work, which is frankly, a mathematical process that once set in motion is very difficult to alter. It's like a one-way process that runs on math, is very computationally intensive, and effectively secures the network by burning a bunch of energy. It's like a thermodynamic process, right? Satoshi Nakamoto did not invent proof of work. This other guy, Adam Back, invented it. He's a major Bitcoiner now, and runs a Bitcoin type company. Satoshi, who he, she, or them, the entity that created Bitcoin, took proof of work and combined it with a couple other ingredients, like the halving every 4 years, in the amount of Bitcoin produced by the mining process, to form Bitcoin and release it into the wild, right? And once it was released into the wild, Bitcoin did nothing but pick up market share and gather momentum, and in an exponential fashion, meaning it started very small and took a long time to really get going. But once it got going, it started to go exponential, right? It started to go basically like this. And you can see that on the price graph. What Elon has done here is simply get us back to the price level for Bitcoin that existed before he got involved a couple months ago, right? He's simply like pulled the reset button. And people who are holders of Bitcoin are used to this. We're used to 80% drops in value, with the expectation that it will continue to grow over the course of decades, right? Because it is a process powered by this proof of work algorithm that nobody is in control of. It's like a doomsday machine, a virus, or a religion, right? That just spreads inexorably. And it ensures that the network can never be reset. It can never, ever be compromised by any individual or group. It's virtually impossible, not theoretically impossible, but like practically impossible to do that. And that more will never be printed. That's why it's the hardest money ever created, right? And this process is going to run until 2140. It's going to run for a long time. Everybody knows the math. Everybody knows the dates. Everybody knows that there will be 21 million coins, and there are 100 million people using it, right? So if you want to go down that road, if you want to go down the proof of work mode, or that road, it's going to be tough for Elon to catch up. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying it's going to be tough because Bitcoin has a huge head start and network effects are real. So that's proof of work. Proof of stake is the other major consensus mechanism. And it is what Ethereum, which is the major competitor to Bitcoin, that's the road they're choosing as Ethereum turns into Ethereum 2, right? And the way proof of stake works is basically you can choose, if you have a certain amount of Ethereum or Ethereum 2, you can choose to basically stake your Ethereum, right? Put it up as collateral and begin attesting to transactions, right? And the way this works is the pools of attestations, right? Which is basically verifying activity on the network, are sort of artificially separated, right, into decentralized groups, right? And you put up your Ethereum as collateral to ensure that the attestations you are doing actually secure the network. And if some kind of bad event happens, if somebody hacks a transaction that you're supposed to be looking over, you are then subject to losing your stake in the process, right? And so in order to become an attester, right, or a verifier in this new form of consensus mechanism, you need to have a certain amount, right, to even get in the door. right?
Yeah.
And you need to have it actually a fair amount. So it's not like the little guy can participate in this.
Well, in a very small way.
Yeah. But like there's actually a threshold, which I believe is 32 Ethereum. And Ethereum is now up around $4,000 or something, right? That. So it's a fair amount. And you get paid for doing this, right? So it can lead to reconcentration, although it takes much less energy, right? Which is its main advantage, I would say. It's energy efficiency. Its main disadvantage, once again, involves security, right? Because it doesn't necessarily prevent, especially bad attesters or groups of attesters, to go back and manipulate the transactions that they're seeing. In particular, verifiers are able to basically front run the transactions they're seeing. So they can actually get out in front of the activity they're seeing in the network and outbid the people that they're supposed to be verifying and make money that way. And that becomes actually a major efficiency drain and source of inefficiency in the network.
Yeah, but just kind of simplifying for the audience. So proof of work, proof of stake, proof of work, just to simplify, takes up a whole lot more energy.
Yes.
Then there's a lot of details, but as an investor, I think the way that you should be thinking about it is, look, there's a lot of potential issues that Elon Musk has with Bitcoin, with respect to energy, with respect to block size, transaction fees, all that kind of stuff. Now, can Bitcoin resolve those issues? I don't think so. Does that mean he's likely to work on something new? I think the answer is yes. I think that's what, as an investor, you should be thinking about is, and on a very simple, high level basis, okay, Elon has clearly moved away from Bitcoin. So now he's got two options, Doge or his own currency. Is he likely to do his own currency? And I believe the chances are at least 80%, maybe 90% yes, is my opinion.
He could, yeah.
And so from there, I would say then if Elon were to start a currency, what does that do to the value of alternative cryptocurrencies? Now, there's two ways of thinking about this. Is it a winner take all market, or is it like metals, like gold, platinum, silver, whatever? I think it's a winner take all market. And the reason why I believe so is because, especially if it becomes a currency, why would there be multiple types of currencies in use? Like with metals, they all have utility. They all have intrinsic value. These cryptocurrencies are all faith-based, right? And if you have one that's operational, that's de facto standard, you don't need others. Once you have Facebook, you don't need MySpace. Once you have Teslacoin, I don't think you're going to need Bitcoin. So that's my view on it. So I would say that in my view, I think one, there's an 80 to 90% chance Elon does Teslacoin or whatever he wants to call it. And then two, if there is a Teslacoin, then you have to think, what does that do to the value of Bitcoin? And what I'm saying is that whereas I thought before there was a very, very small chance that Bitcoin could go to zero. So, and this is where we disagree, Steve, and it's good to have the differing opinions. I believe there's at least a 50% chance that Bitcoin goes to zero.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to have to agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah.
I think even if Elon introduces his own coin, which he could do, I think he's probably testing the waters and really understanding what it is it's going to take and how he could, thinking about how he can meaningfully innovate on the processes that are already in place, which are pretty far along at this point in the form of Ethereum and Bitcoin. That's major competition. Now, Elon has a lot of great ideas, right? So maybe he has something that we've never heard of. Right?
I don't think, honestly, I think that what's happening is that this isn't really, I think what Elon is doing is he's saying, this is what we need in order to have Earth's currency. And then he's probably testing the waters, to your point, of finding if there are people who he can find that can execute that. If he can find them, he will do his own coin. If he can't find them, he'll probably just continue to support like the Doge guys very casually. He'll hold on to his Bitcoin. But I believe the moment he finds somebody who he thinks the team that can execute a Tesla coin, boom, I think it's done. And I do think that there's probably smart guys who have an approach that would make sense. And so that's why I say, I don't say it's 100%. I say it's 80 to 90%, because that 80 to 90% is my belief that Elon will be able to find smart people who want to work on a Tesla coin, who can do it, who have some notion of, not like they've got it all figured out, but they're like, well, we think if we do these things, we can get what you're trying to do.
So let me ask you this. Suppose you're right. Does that help or hurt Tesla?
I mean, if this is a Tesla coin and this is operated under Tesla, how could it hurt?
It's a massive distraction. I mean, one could think about it that way, right? This guy comes up with something new to think about.
I think that's why he hasn't done this before, because I mean,
exactly.
I mean, he understands, like, people don't realize that, and he tweeted about it, that he was behind PayPal. He understands money. He understands about the financial system and currencies. He just has a lot of other problems. I don't think he wants to. I think what he's seeing is he's looking at the economy. He's looking at what's potentially going to happen with inflation and how there may be a shift to crypto. And I think he's like, fuck, another problem I got to solve? Well, God damn it. Well, if I don't do it, who is? Right? And literally, there's no other person in the world who could do it besides him.
Well, literally. Satoshi Nakamoto did it, arguably 10 years ago. But
yeah, but when there was
you don't know who they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and that's the right way to start something like Bitcoin, in my opinion. It's not to be Elon Musk at the head of a public corporation to do this, right? This guy already has Neuralink, he's got SpaceX, he's got the Boring Company, and he's got Tesla. Am I missing anything?
Again, why I think this depends on his ability to source that team.
Yeah.
If he can find it, he will do it, in my opinion.
He should try to track down Satoshi. That's what I would do if I were him. And here's the thing, though, Joe. I want to make it clear that Bitcoin can still become the currency of Earth using so-called layer 2 protocols built on top of the blockchain. So the blockchain, the protocol layer, Bitcoin, yeah, it's expensive. It burns a lot of energy because it's freaking irreversible, and that costs. And nobody's in control of it, and that costs. So you don't have to trust anybody. So that's tough, right? But you can build stuff on top of it using smart contracts, stuff like the Lightning Network, where basically you open up what's called a side chain, right? And you do whatever you want. You send value around very quickly. And this is technology that works. It's not widely adopted, but it does work. And then you reconcile it every so often with the main chain. And it's much, much, much more efficient that way. Okay. So it's like, what would an example be? Gold, right? Being the base layer currency for the United States dollar, in theory, right? You can build on, and then credit cards on top of the US dollar. That would be, what would that be? Layer 3, I guess you could say. So in the history of monetary regimes, like, it's very natural for things to start out kind of inefficient, but pretty hard, and then build stuff on top of that, right? Of course, it dilutes some of the security and trust that is fundamental in Bitcoin's design, right? So some people don't even like Lightning, they're just like, I want to sit on my pile of digital gold and like everybody stay away from me, right? But there are people working on e-commerce solutions driven by Lightning Network and things like that. So it is still possible that developer community actually, I guess, pulls it out over the long term.
Okay, so to wrap up this topic, Steve, what is your outlook?
My outlook,
Elon, and for Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I'm long Bitcoin and long Tesla. I will remain long both, and I will probably buy more of both. Okay. So I think Bitcoin is now cheaper than it was, a lot cheaper. And if you believe in Bitcoin, you're actually happy about that because you can get more. And again, I see Bitcoin as a force of nature that at this point has gone too far and cannot be resisted. Regardless of whether you think that's a good thing or not, it's just the reality. That's how I see it. I see Elon as somebody who is a visionary, who has done amazing things and is going to do many more amazing things to be the richest guy in the world and help the earth. I'm with you there. So I'm going to invest more in Tesla because I think Tesla is a great stock. But I think this particular sort of confluence of events doesn't make sense. I think it's a distraction, and I'm I don't know. I'm kind of moving on from it.
So for me, like I mentioned, 80-90% chance that I think Elon starts a Tesla coin of some kind, whatever it's called. I also think that, I think if he does it and if he's successful, I never would bet against Elon.
Yeah.
I do think Bitcoin goes to zero. Doge and
All right.
Bitcoin go to zero.
You heard it here first.
and I think that also, to your point, if you're not in Tesla, you should get in now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna, every spare nickel I have, on Monday, tomorrow, I'm gonna be putting into Tesla. I
just load it up.
Yeah, I think, for me personally, I feel like this is like the right time, and especially ahead of Elon doing something crazy with like a cryptocurrency that's part of Tesla. Now, I hope he doesn't have it separate, like a,
yeah,
like a SpaceX or whatever. But
well, it really depends how he sets it up, right? And how centralized it is, and whether he's in charge. And it just depends.
But it does also feel like it would be good. I mean, again, we hypothesized about a Tesla coin a while back, and one of the things that we mentioned is that it'd be good to have an energy company that actually kind of launches the coin. So there is synergy there.
I have thought that between Tesla and SpaceX, there's an interesting opportunity for power generation in space, because solar is so much more efficient. And if you're doing mining, if you're doing cryptocurrency mining, you could do that on satellites. You don't need to pay for cooling because you're in outer space, and you have incredibly powerful solar, right? And then you just transmit the blockchain back down to Earth. You secure it. All of these problems are solved. And the funny thing is, Elon actually has all the pieces to that puzzle. He could make that happen. And he could be the world's biggest Bitcoin miner. He could just take over Bitcoin mining forever if he wanted to.
Or you could do Teslacoin.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. My thing about Teslacoin is I think he's going to realize that he is too late. He is too late to overtake Bitcoin or Ethereum in a meaningful way.
I just don't think so. Look at the run on Bitcoin and Ethereum and Doge just in 1 year. And you don't think Elon, if he I actually think that Elon is so famous and flows are moving so fast these days. Like, people can switch just like that. I mean, I think the job that Facebook did, and we talked about this when we initially talked about Teslacoin. Like, I said that I felt a Teslacoin could be Facebook to Bitcoin's MySpace. Right. I actually think that was harder than if Elon did a Tesla coin, the transition of people to that currency would be so fast.
I would probably buy some, but I'd hold my Bitcoin.
Exactly.
And to be clear, Joe, like, some people think that Ethereum is actually the Facebook to like Bitcoin's MySpace, right?
Yeah,
a lot of people do.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
Do we want to go into the second topic? It's like
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about an article that appeared in Bloomberg by one of their opinion writers, Shuli Ren, who I really like, called "How to Afford Yale If Inflation Creeps Above 3%." And I think inflation has crept above 3%. So this becomes meaningful. Yes. To be clear, I did not attend Yale, so I may not, in fact, be smart enough to understand how to afford Yale, or how to understand how Yale has done so well with its endowment, right? Which is what this article is actually about. But as a dad of two small children, the headline definitely caught my eye because I need to figure out, as an investor, one of the main things I need to do is figure out how to afford 2 undergraduate tuitions in about 15 years. Now, I have hoped against hope that the whole institution of university education gets disrupted and collapses before I need to worry about this. I think that there's still like an off chance that will happen, but realistically, yeah, we're going to need to pay for college education. That's really hard. The article says that private schools have grown 130% more expensive over the past 20 years. That's roughly a 4% compounded annual growth rate, which has beaten core inflation of about 1.5% over that time. So 15 years from now could easily imply another doubling or more if core inflation goes above 3%, which seems increasingly likely and may have fact already happened for all we know. Here's the thing, Yale's endowment, $31 billion, pretty good, and has produced a 12.4% annual return over the past 30 years, which is excellent. That beats the stock market's 10.7%. And it has had to do this because the cost side of higher ed has risen quite aggressively. I come from the world of academia. I've gotten a little taste of this in the form of like salaries for star professors. If if Yale wants to hire you, they may actually give you like $500,000 or $1 million to hire you away from Duke or Cal or wherever, right? And those costs have just gotten tougher. Obviously, the new dorms, the new athletic facilities, all that kind of thing, to try to attract that tuition money. The manager for Yale's endowment is this guy, David Swensen, who passed away recently. How did he pull it off? He was really, really aggressive when allocating. It's like, there's no secret, right? And we've talked about sort of aggressive strategies for growth. I know, Joe, you use a lot of aggressive strategies when it comes to your investment portfolio. So basically, the Yale endowment included little to no bonds or fixed income. You don't want to be holding bonds or fixed income stuff come inflation. Not much in the way of index funds either, because there's just not enough growth there. And a lot of money in pretty risky stuff like private equity and venture capital. 40% of the frickin' endowment of Yale is in private equity and venture capital. And other endowments are about 15% on that benchmark. And then real estate as well at 10% as a natural hedge against inflation, right? Now, unless you're an accredited investor, it's tough to get access to private equity or venture capital deal flow. And even if you are accredited, it's still tough to gain access to good deal flow, right? You can get access to crap deal flow, but unless you really know the right people, you know what you're doing, you might get screwed. So the question I want to ask you, Joe, is what are some alternatives, right? Because I know you've put a lot of thought into your strategy and your framework for investing, which is an aggressive one, right?
I mean, I don't consider it aggressive, actually, right?
No?
Like, so let's say you put all your money in Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you going to beat the index funds? Yes.
Probably.
Are you highly diversified? Yes. I don't consider that aggressive, but I do think, and you've got exposure to more global markets than you would with a typical other type of company. So I would say that I would say that right now, the way that we're moving in terms of, a lot of money in index funds, and therefore you're investing in a lot of different companies. And when you're looking at too much dollar exposure, I think that's where there's more risk. And so I do think owning like 4 or 5 names, is that risky if one of them is not the right pick? Yeah. And like if you're like me and one of those picks is Tesla, you could consider that risky, but I think it's riskier to try and be a market timer. That to me, that's the number one risk. Number one risk is your holding period. Like if you hold for more than 5-10 years, then I think that automatically eliminates the biggest risk of all.
Yeah, like empirically, if you hold for, I forget exactly what the number is, like you will almost never lose money, right? If you're investing in like something on the stock market.
I just know that that's the biggest mistake I made. It's like, buy, shit, sell, buy. Like,
me too.
Like fuck, and then like the stocks that I just like, wait, I forgot about this. Holy shit, what is this? Like, what am I doing? Why don't I just like stop thinking, bet on the trend? It's so easy, or it's so much easier to see a trend, right? Like, online retail. Like, who doesn't understand the online retail market and that more offline is going to online? That's Amazon, right? Yeah. Like, bet on that trend. Who's the number one company in that space? Amazon. Boom.
Right? Done. You're done. Yeah.
And so like, that's why, like, I call myself Macro 108. Macro, what are the macro trends? What are the things that you want to bet on and then hold forever? Like if you saw the growth of PayPal, just online payments from from when it went public to today, I mean, that's like a massive return over time, right? And PayPal's not even a great company, in my opinion. And so, like,
there are better ones. Yeah,
and like the thesis behind Tesla, like bet on a long-term thesis, and then go with the market winner, especially in technology-based companies, because you will more often than not see winner-take-all markets where the leaders in those spaces accrue more of the value than the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth place winner, right?
Yep.
And so try to bet on the market leaders, bet on those spaces, and then just try and hold.
Yeah. Here's another thing you can do. You can bet on yourself. You can start your own business, right?
Yeah.
I've tried it 3 times. I've had some success, not enough, right? But I'm gunning for a 4th. It's only a matter of time. Joe, you run your own business now. You have your own startup, right? Mm-hmm. You're betting on yourself and it's going well, right? So that's a big risk, but the rewards are astronomical, right?
Yeah, there is kind of like, there's an asymmetry in terms of your downside relative to your upside, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what makes, I mean, would I be able to have a higher salary doing something else? Sure, but my upside is, effectively unlimited. And so I think that's the, for doing, I mean, at most you're going to be able to do double the amount of work, but for double the amount of work, like, let's say you're working 16 hours a day, even then, like the potential upside relative to, even if you were just going crazy and doing double the amount of work is, it's not symmetrical. So
no, it's not, because you're looking at orders of magnitude of upside, right? And this is the reason to, hold Tesla or hold Bitcoin, right? They're further along, right? But right.
And I remember David Swensen wrote a book, right? Unconventional Success.
I'm not sure. I should read that. Yeah. Put that in the show notes. Unconventional Success. If you don't want to start your own business, identify friends and family, right, that are looking for angel investment. And
I'm less a fan of, like, if you see the returns for a lot of so-called successful angel investors, it's pretty low.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Even some of these, I'm sure like Y Combinator is doing well, but there are a bunch of angel funds where the returns are crap. Like you'd rather be holding Amazon or like that. So.
Got it. All right.
And a lot of people lose money on like the earlier stage, because seed stage investment is so hit or miss.
It's very random. There's a lot of leverage there in terms of upside, but yeah.
Unless you've got some form of structural advantage on this at the seed stage, like you're a Y Combinator or something like that, I probably wouldn't recommend it for the typical person.
Or if you're very experienced in your business and you're well connected and you know what you're doing, right? Those are all advantages. Sure. I don't know anybody like that in the mobile games business, but anyway, and then you can look at alternative asset classes, of course, crypto, that trade on scarcity, right? Scarcity is the name of the game when fiat is getting blown out by money printing, which is what's happening now. Landlording, so owning real estate and getting rent on it. Collectibles, there's a crossover between crypto and collectibles called NFTs that has basically gone from nothing to a multi-billion-dollar market very, very, very quickly. And then finally, there's something called TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities, which are inflation-linked T-bills invented by, I believe, Larry Summers in the late 90s. Right. These have basically not been a big deal until pretty recently. And now they're a very big deal. They're a $1.3 trillion market. So if you're looking for debt or fixed income, that is probably the way to go in an environment like this. But I frankly wouldn't be, right? It's like use some of those other strategies. Use concentration. Use buy and hold, right? Yeah. I'm trying to basically, my portfolio is kind of a mess. I bought too many different stocks, and now I'm trying to reverse that in like a tax efficient way. And it's not that easy, right? So if you're starting out now, follow Joe's advice, right? Buy Tesla, buy Amazon. These are things that make sense. Yeah. Like Amazon is not so much of a bet. It's pretty well established. So is Tesla. Tesla still has asymmetric upside, look for those asymmetries. And yeah, so I thought that was a good article.
All right. So yeah, so I guess that was more about how do you derive returns in an inflation type of environment. So,
exactly. Yeah.
okay.
And that's how Yale did it. And if you want to send your kids to Yale, you better figure out how to like pay a $250,000 tuition for 4 years.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, the question though is like, how much higher, even with inflation, like how much higher can that go in terms of like,
it can go a lot higher, man. With inequality the way it is. I mean, barring some kind of collapse or
so
technological disruption, you know?
So then the only people that go to college are very, very affluent people in the future.
Well, Yale, like Ivy's, sure, right? But you could also ask the question, do you need to go to an Ivy? And the obvious answer is no, you don't, right? But even public education is getting more expensive, right?
Sure.
So then you think about, well, what about community college? Biden has a plan to pay for, I think, 2 years of community and then allow you to transfer. So that's a great idea. There's vocational, which we don't do enough of in this country. You can make great money in a trade, many different trades, right? Not everybody needs to go to college, right? It can be a very poor investment, especially depending on what you major in. Yeah. But it's like, it's good to aim high, but it's also good to be efficient and look for those asymmetries. Right. I think,
or you could just move to like Finland, Sweden, some of these.
Yeah, that's exploiting it. Right. I've fantasized about moving to Canada and having my kids go to like amazing Canadian public universities, right?
Yeah.
Like University of British Columbia or Simon Fraser, one of those, right? Those are great schools, right? Dirt cheap, especially for the value you get. Of course, the value accrues to Canada, but that's what happens in an enlightened country, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, that does it for that article. Are we all out of stuff to talk about?
Yeah, I think that's it. So there you have it. Our thoughts on Elon's potential to start a new coin, potentially Teslacoin.
We'll see.
Our different outlooks on that. And then also, what do you do during inflation in terms of investing? Go back, I'll put a link, but we did cover investment strategies. I do think that we have I think the most important thing is for people to have a framework and a perspective on how to invest, like have a system.
Yeah.
And finally, I'll also link, again, I actually hadn't heard anyone speak about Teslacoin before us, as far as I know. And so
and you follow Tesla pretty closely. So
yeah, I'll put a link to when we talked about that, when we speculated about Teslacoin, and you can hear our initial arguments for Elon doing a Teslacoin.
Yeah.
Anyway, there it is, SSB number 10. Until next week, everybody. Catch y'all later. Bye.
Thank you.